Hello, and welcome to Off the Field and Screens, the Detroit Way, a Detroit sports podcast. I'm your host, Chad Marriott, and boy, oh boy, did we have a lot happen in the last week. Just starting with the Tigers, that's going to take the bulk. I usually at like a Tigers-based podcast, one episode a week feels like enough through most of the season, because otherwise you're doing a lot of filler and those types of things. But during the playoffs, it feels like you need one for every single game. You could talk about each of these games for 30 to 40 minutes. Let's go ahead and jump into the wild card. Going into the wild card last week, I was not optimistic about the Tigers' chances. Just the way they finished the season, the vibes, the 1-5 against the Guardians in September, it just did not feel good. But we get into the wild card, and Tarek Skubal threw an absolute gem in game one of the wild card. He went 7 2/3 and struck out 14. And it should have been considered a pitching duel, but Gavin Williams went 6 innings and had 8 strikeouts, but it just wasn't comparable. I mean, Skubal was just so dominant in that game. And then ultimately, the Tigers managed to manufacture a run on a Zach McKinstry single in that game, that bunt, the safety squeeze, and playing small ball, finding a way to win. Early on, there was a fielding error that allowed Carpenter to get to second. He hit a single, got to second base on a fielding error. Torkelson singled in that run. Now that extra base running is the same thing that they were able to score later on. And then Will Vest came in and shut that game down. And which was surprising too, because he came into the playoffs not playing so great. And then we get into game 2, and this is where the storyline of the Tigers not being able to take advantage starts to creep in, because when you win and you miss opportunities, it's like, we won, who cares? When you lose and you miss opportunities, that's when it starts to hurt. So in this game, the Tigers, game 2, went 1 for 15 with runners in scoring position. They struck out 11 times and had 7 hits for that game, which brought at that point, their series total up to 2 for 23 runners in scoring position, 21 left on base, and 24 strikeouts. They had that chance. McKinstry got thrown out trying to go from first to third. But ultimately, that shouldn't matter in a game where you went 1 for 15 with runners in scoring position. I know momentum and all that, but they needed to get more hits in that game if they wanted to win. And then the big note from that game is in the 8th inning, Troy Melton came in and it kind of came undone, and Brant Herter came in and gave up a 3-run homer. Ultimately, it was just not a pretty ball game. Then we get to game 3. Suddenly you're feeling as a Tigers fan, you're like, well, whatever, I guess. This feels sort of hopeless. But they get into game 3, and the Tigers going into that game, after that game, are 15-19, including the playoff games in the last 2 seasons against the Guardians. The Tigers have a 15-19 record against the Guardians. And they finally vanquished them. Coming into this game, you have those awful numbers, and it starts with Dylan Dingler, massive home run, a solo shot in the 6th inning, and then before that he had thrown out Ramirez in the 5th, and Dingler is, I think, going to be a star for this Tigers team. Like, maybe in this postseason. He's already had some great moments, but long-term, Dylan Dingler's going to be a dude, as they say. And Javi Baez played well, and then it was like the dam broke loose with Torkelson breaking an 0 for 9 hitless streak. Wenzel Perez, who was 0 for 11 in the postseason, got a hit, a big hit, an RBI, 2 RBI single, I believe, and even Dingler, that home run was his first hit of the postseason. Flaherty looked pretty good. He actually had a better outing than Mize, which is why I suspect that this week he'll be pitching Game 3 at Comerica Park against the Mariners in the ALDS. And Kyle Finnegan in the wild card pitched well. The big trade line addition played well. And they really had that big explosion in that 7th inning. And Javier Baez, I think, is the series MVP for that wild card. He had 5 hits. He's been excellent at shortstop. And, I've been as big a critic on him as anybody. Not too long ago saying I would like him out of Detroit. He just feels like one of those big game players, which in some sports, it's a little bit more tolerable. When it's 162 games, the guys that don't get up for every game can kind of get aggravating. But Javi in these playoff games has been, and in the must-win games to try and get into the playoffs at the end of the season, he's been really, really, really good. So can't say anything against that. So we turn to the ALDS, and we're still in the dogfight. The hope was, it's playoff baseball, right? It's always going to be tight. Runs are going to be hard to come by. But the hope was that going into the ALDS after that big inning in Game 3 of the wild card, that suddenly the Tigers were going to have that offensive spark back. And through 2 games, that has not been true. Game 1. Lots of surprises. Troy Melton, who is also going to be a bright part of this Tigers' future as a starting pitcher, pitched a great game. And this was just an absolute dogfight. Like, getting into the 11th inning before, again, Zach McKinstry gets the big hit in the 11th. And there's soft contact through the hole, but scored the run, so that's all that matters. And of note was Melton was the first Tigers rookie to start a playoff game since Justin rookie pitcher to start a playoff game since Justin Verlander. And then, again, there was an excellent play from Javier Baez to get a double play from Josh Naylor, where he tagged the guy and then still got the out at first. It was a phenomenal play. Finnegan, great again. And then Cater Montero. I have been a big Cater Montero fan, despite a lot of Tigers media and fans, I guess, either overlooking him or kind of criticizing him. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but I think Cater could end up being that another utility pitcher in the way that Tyler Holton is. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Tyler Holton, because especially since the playoffs started, Tyler Holton, knock on wood, everybody, has been phenomenal. But I think he could be that guy that could close, that guy that can open a game, guy that could take 3 innings in the middle of a game. He could kind of put him in anywhere. I think that might long-term be the role for Cater. And then, they were able to pull that one out, despite one of the alarming signs from that game. And this is why you're like, oh, we won, who cares? They were 2 for 11 with runners in scoring position, left 8 on base, and struck out 16 times in that game. So you won. They won. Tigers won. So it's like, whatever. We got the W. A win is a win, right? And then in Game 2, that philosophy came to hurt them really, really bad. At one, Skubal made 2 mistakes. He gave up 2 home runs to Jorge Polanco, 2 solo shots. But other than that, he went 7 innings, kind of defying, like the storyline had been that, oh, the Mariners kind of have his number because he had given up 5 earned runs across 12 innings. Oh, sorry. He'd given up 7 earned runs across 10 innings against the Mariners this year. The Mariners starter, Luis Castillo, who pitched a good game against the Tigers, had only given up 5 earned runs across 12 innings in 2 games against them this year. And he had 2 wins. And ultimately, the Mariners pulled this out in a 3-2 win. At one point, Jorge Polanco had more home runs than the Tigers had hits. So if that's any indication of what lost them this game, they had 3 hits in the whole game. Spencer Torkelson got on the board. Doubled in 2 runs, tying the game in the 8th inning before Kyle Finnegan came up and gave the lead back. And a lot of people are going to blame Kyle Finnegan. Oh, the bullpen. Oh, that's the big Scott Harris deadline edition. Oh, rah, 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 rah. They had 3 hits. What the Tigers are asking of their pitching staff, starters and relievers, is to be perfect. They have to be perfect. They can't give up. They can't make any mistakes. And ultimately, this game came down to Skubal had 2 mistakes, and Finnegan, I guess, had a few himself. But the point being is, if you get 3 hits and you're in the game, it feels like you can't really blame the pitching. You have to blame the Tigers not getting on base. And in this game, just want to make sure I get these numbers right. They only had 6 chances in this game with runners in scoring position. Yeah, they went 1 for 6, left 7 on base, and they struck out 10 times. This 26 times total in the series, that's going to start to raise some red flags. So that's a continuing, ongoing thing that they've not really been able to get the runs across. And in this one, it's just even they're not even able to hit the ball. So they're going to have to be better when they come to Detroit with Jack Flaherty and Casey Mize taking the mound in games 3 and 4. And I think they're really going to need Flaherty and Mize to go deeper in this series than they did against the Mariners, because the Tigers' kind of middle of the bullpen is not super strong. I'll be curious about Troy Melton's availability to get in there again, because they probably are going to need him to pitch. And do you feel comfortable with Canely and another Rafael Montero inning? They're probably both going to have to. Once they get to that like Holton Finnegan Vest combination, I feel pretty confident, even though Finnegan had that outing. I mean, he was due for one. The same part of the lineup saw him 2 days in a row. I mean, I don't know what you do different there. Maybe you try Vest first and then Finnegan to get the save, just for the sake of having somebody else see that part of the lineup. But I don't know. I'm not one to question AJ Hinch. And then that's about all for the Tigers right now. Let's turn to talking about the Lions. The Lions hadn't won against the Cincinnati Bengals since 1992, but they did come out on top, 37-24. Yes, and a few notes from this game is a win is a win is a win is a win. Now I'm kind of contradicting myself about what I said about the Tigers about, well, there's this trend and you don't care about it when they win. I think in football, and particularly in the regular season, that's not as worrying as in a playoff series in baseball, just because the level of the issue. It would be one thing if the Lions had to score 50 to win because their defense was so bad, or had to hold, the Bengals to 10 points or 3 points to win. The concerning thing here was the offense couldn't really put the game away early with all the turnovers in the first half. Jake Browning for the Bengals threw 3 interceptions, 2 in the first half and 1 early in the second half. And it feels like the Lions missed out on some opportunities to put some long drives together and kind of put them away. They didn't. It never felt like the Bengals really had a chance to win, but it was uncomfortable how long that it felt like, well, you can't say it's over yet. At one point, it felt like that. They scored twice in a row, but then the Lions, that is, and then the Bengals, I think, scored twice in a row. So it was like, is this still a football game? Yeah, when it was 28-17, it sounds ridiculous to say, well, this is a little uncomfortable, but the Lions managed to continue to score in the second half. And a big note about this team is the Lions offensive players are very humble. There's no, it's my turn, it's this, that. Everybody gets their shot. Jared Goff was pretty good in this game. Again, struggled with some of the pressure, but I think a lot of that had to do with having a first-time starter at left tackle, one of the most important positions in football, Giovanni Manu, who I think played good, all things considered. I mean, you have to think about how Christian Mahogany, and Tate Ratledge played in their first game this year, and I would say he probably held his own better than they did in that game, or compared, relatively held his own. It'll be good to get Taylor Decker back, though. And then you had Laporta and get involved a lot this week. Like, it was his turn. Brock Wright got involved. Jahmyr Gibbs was the primary running back in the first half. David Montgomery got a lot of carries in the second half and a really cool touchdown pass that he got to throw. Nice on John Morton, drawing that up. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown really got involved in the second half for his second 100-yard game this season. The big question is the secondary actually better, or is Jake Browning just that bad? I think Jake Browning is bad, and it's really hard to tell if the secondary is improved, especially now as the injuries are piling up again, really testing their depth. I mean, Browning did finish with 251 passing yards and 3 touchdown passes. Of course, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are 2 of the best wide receivers in the NFL, so that was kind of a hard ask on the Lions secondary, period, even with a backup quarterback. I'd say, I'm not sure. Incomplete. I don't know if the secondary is improved enough. I guess I would say they're better, but how much better? Terrion Arnold had flashes where he looked better, but generally it's still, he's getting a lot of penalties. He's making some mistakes. I really like Amik Robertson and how he played this week. He had one really bad error where he gave up a deep pass to Jamar Chase, but other than that, looked pretty good. So the verdict this week is a win. They're going to have to play better on the road in Kansas City next week on Sunday Night Football. I can guarantee you that Patrick Mahomes will play better than Jake Browning. So they're going to have to clean it up. They're going to have to play a full 60-minute game to get that win on the road. But for now, take the win. As we wrap up here, just wanted to touch on the Red Wings are getting started this week. It's a crazy time for sports in Detroit. You got the Lions going. The Tigers have at least 2 more playoff games in the ALDS. The Red Wings have their season/home opener on Thursday, and they play again Saturday. And the Pistons tonight are starting their preseason in Memphis. But the Red Wings, I'm with the putting Justin Hall and Eric Gustafson through the waiver cycle. I'm pretty confident that they're going to have at least 3 rookies on this opening night roster. And I think that's a good thing. If they go with that route, they will make the playoffs. That's my big, hot take. I'm not usually one for that, but they will make the playoffs if they stick with the young guys. Because I'm not seeing any more upside from these veterans they've rolled out there the last few years. I think they're good and they play their roles, but that's what they are. They're role players. You need these young players to start to step into these bigger, more important roles and be on the team. Because if they play the rookies and they miss the playoffs, at least you have that experience and these guys are getting better. And then next year you can add some more of the young guys and you're building towards something. If you stick with the veterans and miss the playoffs, that is an absolute fail on all grounds, all levels of evaluation. And that is what I have to say about the Red Wings right now. A full season preview will be coming out on the website offthefieldandscreen.com shortly. And then I just want to wrap up with a brief chat about the Pistons starting their preseason. Something to watch out for is Jaden Ivey is going to be coming back from an injury that has had him out since January. So he's going to play his first preseason game, and all eyes are going to be on him. And there is a very good chance he's going to be rusty, or he's going to be a little overexcited and make some mistakes. Don't let the media turning on him so quickly sway you from the Jaden Ivey hype train. Because if that happens, if he starts slow in the preseason or something looks a little sloppy coming out, everybody's going to be like, see, I told you, we should have traded him for some superstar, huh? Right? And that's because that's what they wanted anyway, so they're looking for an excuse to try and push that narrative. Don't let that sway you. Don't let the short term sway you. Jaden Ivey's going to be the breakout player this year. And another big thing is, for the Pistons' improvement coming into this season is we have not seen a healthy Jaden Ivey and Desar Thompson play with Cade Cunningham. And we're going to get a look at that for the first time. And Isaiah Stewart's healthy. And you can't count out Jalen Duren's continued improvement. And then I'm very curious to see how Ron Holland and Desar Thompson's jump shot evolved over the summer. They don't have to be lights out shooters, either of them. Remember, they're like higher level versions of Bruce Brown. And Bruce Brown was a good role player until he developed a 3-point shot that you had to respect. I'm not saying these guys have to be good 3-point shooters. You just have to respect them. You can't just play off them all the way back like it's TJ McConnell or something. They have to get up. And that creates more space for Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey to go to work in the paint by playing them like that. And if that's the case, they can be very high level role players per se. Although I do think Asar Thompson's ready to have a breakout season too. I think this team is going to be very good if they stay healthy. I really, really think, second hot take on this week's episode, I think they can win 50 games if they stay healthy. And you get all these guys the chance to play together, the Ivies, the Thompsons, the Stewarts with Cade, and Duren stays healthy too. I really think that this is a 50-win team. And the attitude that they have, they're not backing down from anybody. So lots to look forward to. Hopefully the Tigers can give us some more to talk about. Otherwise, next week we'll be doing a post-mortem, or we'll be talking about the ALCS. The Lions have Kansas City on Sunday Night Football, which is a big game, and some people are at one point it didn't look like that you could talk about it as a possible Super Bowl preview, but I would never count Kansas City out. The last couple, we'll see how they do tonight, but they're looking a lot better after a slow start. And then we'll talk about the Pistons preseason and the Red Wings first couple of games. All right. This has been the Detroit Way. See you next time.